Hello and welcome to this course, How to Lead Virtual Teams. My name is Doug Gray, and I'm not sure, today's March 18th, I'm not sure if St. Patrick's Day even happened yesterday anywhere in the world. As you all know, the coronavirus has forced all of us to use virtual tools, and teams are critical as we continue to do our work together. To be clear, there's a bunch of different perspectives on this. One is that we've had virtual teams as long as we've had recorded history. We've always had a fiat from a king or some leader that was distributed to some dislocated or remote team, and then they did or didn't do that. But I think we've got a compelling argument for a lot of more significant changes. In fact, so we just looked at leadership. Now we're going to look at knowledge. And this does not mean to sound awkward or complex. The books behind you, the books you've read, the courses you've experienced, these are all aspects of the knowledge you bring to your virtual team. That process of sharing the information, however, is messy, often. I invite you to think about this in three ways. How do you store your files? How do you store data? How do you retrieve files, just like a book off the shelf? How do you share files with other people? It's as simple as that. So knowledge sharing is that process of accessing, managing, distributing information when it's needed. It's just in time. One example is SharePoint. In the last, 5 or 10 years, all of us, virtually all of us, now have cloud-based data storage places. Amazon Web Services is the biggest generator of revenue for them, in part because they knew this is a demand, not only for retailers, but for any company. A massive number of Fortune 500s now depend on the cloud to store that data. So there's public information, there's private information, and sometimes I use the cloud, because I'm getting older, to retrieve. So in the upper right where it says search, I'll just put in a word or two. Or I'll go to iDrive instead of desktop, and then I'll retrieve those files. We're getting at different tools, and you might use SharePoint as an example, to retrieve in different ways. So SharePoint could lead to photos or graphs or videos or images or different kinds of virtual data. And it's important to note that those different types of data work best with different kinds of people. I sometimes will go to YouTube when I want to learn a certain kind of skill, like how to repair something. Or I'll go to a web search for certain kinds of updates on a topic that interests me. Or I'll use a Google alert to get an update on a psychological study that relates to one of my interests. The point, we all retrieve data in different ways so that we can share it in a simple way. One reason why Google Docs are so prevalent is because they make knowledge sharing very easy. It could be that when you hit the three dots in the upper right of your preferred platform, whatever it is, you'll find that it's very easy for you to invite people to share those docs, edit those docs or not, and it could be that becomes the norm in your organization. We've always done this. It used to be more synchronous, and it used to be that knowledge was siloed, and that's tragic. When you think about knowledge this way, sales knows this, ops knows that, sales doesn't talk to ops, ops doesn't like sales because they're always pushy. Well, so what? If we think about knowledge sharing this way, then it becomes possible to access that information using whatever organizational culture you've got, and then make smart business decisions. So I think when we're clear about our vision, mission, goals, and metrics, then we can build the relationships. Remember that network relationship map I invited you to make a few slides ago? That accelerates trust, and it accelerates better communication. If you don't do it, go back, spend a minute, create that little snowflake or spider web or network map so that you can make smarter business decisions ahead. Second point, use phone calls, use Zoom for certain kinds of decision making. Why? Because they're synchronous. Use email or SharePoint for one-way communication. Read this before the meeting. If people are better prepared, they'll make smarter decisions. Use artificial intelligence like bots to track the quantity of interactions or amount of time on a task. You may know that certain companies already do this. At IBM, they'll screen scrape, which means they'll track the quality and the quantity of your interactions, your digital interactions. So if Doug types, "I hate my manager" in caps, or "I can't wait till my vacation" in caps, I'll instantly get a message back at IBM which says, do you need to speak to your manager? Or whatever the trigger is. And the point is that we're able to use artificial intelligence and bots to look at pro-social desired behavior. And this is critically important. You may know that at the University of Pennsylvania, the positive psychology folks led by Marty Seligman are able to track Twitter usage in a certain geography or country and look at depression, despair, or optimism and positivity. We can see this data. Some researchers are using that to inform us in whatever business objective we've got. So let's imagine that there's a Twitter spike in coronavirus. How do I maintain social distance when I want to go out with my friends at a restaurant or a bar? That's an example of something that could be knowledge shared virtually that informs you and your team to make smarter business decisions ahead. Knowledge sharing is always occurred, but it's typically occurred within silos. You had to go to that elite university or that elite library to gain the knowledge to make that smart decision. We used to put physicians and lawyers, well, physicians, on statues of a sense. Now we can go to a digital source, obtain the knowledge that we think is going to inform that investment or visit with that professional. And it does flatten the field a little bit. So there are pro-social reasons to do this, and then there are non-constructive reasons to do this. If you're inclined to be judgmental and want to use social media to foster depression or myths or lies, carry on. Spend all your day on social media. I invite you to not use that as a knowledge source. I invite you to look at various ways to boost desired behaviors. And they're called pro-social in my world of psychology. So business psychologists know a lot of tools that foster pro-social behavior and better relationships and virtual trust. And I think that they need to get out more. The field of psychology is only 100 years old. Positive psychology is maybe 20 years old. Knowledge sharing is something that you now know, based on my examples, of things that you can do immediately with your team. Share the positives, nudge the desired behaviors, and it'll accelerate even more knowledge sharing. People will share links to tools or links to content that will be just in time, which is what we've been doing for decades. You click on, you do your search, and you get the information you need. You share it with your friends, or you share it with your team. So that's tool 4, knowledge sharing. And in a second, we'll go on to tool number 5, which is motivation.